The story begins with a high schooler named Taiyo Asano. He went through a terrible car crash that took away his parents and his little brother. This sad event taught him two important things about life. First, he learned that sometimes we don't realize how much something means to us until we lose it. Second, he realized that life can slip away too easily. The idea that someone he cared about could be taken away from him just like that scared Asano. He worried that even if he got close to someone, like the girl he had feelings for, they might be taken away from him too. This fear started to make him shake. But then, the girl beside him reached out to comfort him. She took his hand and spoke to him with kindness. She reassured him that everything would be okay. She promised him that she wouldn't leave his side, no matter what happened. And in that moment, Asano felt a little bit of comfort in his heart. After the funeral, Asano, the red-haired boy, found himself trudging back to school. It felt like everyone expected him to move forward, but he wasn't sure how. During lunch, a trio of his classmates ambled over, all smiles and invitations, to join them. Asano hesitated, then declined, for what felt like the umpteenth time. His classmates didn't understand his reluctance. They thought he was just playing hard to get. But Asano's nerves were on edge. Socializing felt like tiptoeing through a minefield. They backed off when they sensed his discomfort. To them, Asano seemed shy, a bit of a loner. But he confided in us that he appreciated their gestures. It wasn't that he didn't want friends. He just couldn't bear the thought of losing someone else. So he pushed them away, guarding his heart from further pain. Asano's friend, Mutsumi, came over after the funeral. She was in the same class as him, but Asano acted like he didn't care about her company. He told her to leave him alone. But Mutsumi could see through his tough exterior. She knew he needed someone to talk to. Mutsumi insisted they have lunch together. Even though Asano seemed like he might refuse, Mutsumi wasn't having any of it. She sat down with him and told him how worried she was. Asano's antisocial behavior made her fear he'd be alone forever. But Asano kept up his act. He told Mutsumi to go hang out with the seniors who were interested in her. Mutsumi dodged the suggestion like a pro. She reminded Asano that his parents would be sad if he didn't start communicating better and moving forward with his life. She urged him to work on his communication skills. Mutsumi was just about to share her lunch with Asano when, out of the blue, their vice principal, Mr. Hirokawa, swooped in and took a bite. It was clear he had a soft spot for Mutsumi's cooking, but his flirtatious banter left both Asano and Mutsumi feeling pretty annoyed. Before leaving, Hirokawa asked Asano to come see him after classes. Feeling a bit uneasy, Asano made his way to the teacher's room, his mind still stuck on the car accident that had shaken him up. Ever since that day, he struggled to open up to anyone, including his teachers. Reluctantly, he stepped into Vice Principal Hirokawa's office, where the man had apparently been waiting for him for quite a while. Offering Asano a cup of tea, Hirokawa sat a little too close for comfort, making sure Asano didn't feel at ease at all. Asano broke the silence, wondering why Mr. Hirokawa wanted to meet him, and if something was wrong. Mr. Hirokawa then said he wanted to show Asano his collection of photos of Mutsumi. Asano was surprised by this and thought Mr. Hirokawa was a bit strange for having so many pictures of Mutsumi. As Mr. Hirokawa showed him Mutsumi's childhood photos, Asano felt confused. He couldn't understand why a teacher would have pictures of Mutsumi from when she was a child. As they talked, Hirokawa confessed something unsettling to Asano. He'd been secretly keeping an eye on Mutsumi her whole life. He claimed he was doing it to protect her from anyone who might try to harm her emotionally. He even showed Asano a disturbing video of himself beating up another boy who had shown interest in Mutsumi. Now, Asano was realizing that Hirokawa was not just protective, but dangerously possessive. He wondered how to get out of this situation without becoming a target himself. Hirokawa's jealousy towards him was palpable. He resented Asano for the attention Mutsumi gave him, like making him homemade lunches and giving him special treatment. Feeling trapped and uneasy, Asano knew he had to find a way to keep himself and Mutsumi safe from Hirukawa's obsessive behavior. So to make sure that Asano stays away from Mutsumi, Hirukawa brings out his knife and puts it on Asano's throat, threatening to stay away from Mutsumi. Asano was totally puzzled by the weird bond between this crazy guy and Mutsumi. It seemed like the dude had gone off the deep end. Then out of the blue, the nutcase spills the beans. He's actually Mutsumi's big bro, and he's got a major sister complex. No wonder he's acting all bonkers with his powers. Before he can do any harm to Asano, this girl swoops in through the window, laying down the law to Hirukawa. She's like, "Cut it out, dude." And bam! She floods the room with this crazy bright light, swoops up Asano, and they bolt before Hirukawa can even blink. Now things are getting spicy. Hirukawa's done playing around. He's on his feet, ready to get down to business. Meanwhile, Asano, who had been knocked out cold by the surprise attack from the mysterious girl, wakes up the next morning to quite the sight. He finds himself lying beneath Mutsumi and 5 other peculiar individuals, among them the white-haired girl who had come to his rescue. Completely bewildered, Asano panics and demands an explanation for the bizarre situation. Mutsumi steps up to clarify things for him. She reveals that among the odd group surrounding him are her siblings. First up is her elder sister, Futaba, followed by her brother Shinzo, who inexplicably occupies a seat within a trash can. Then there's her other sister, Shion, who's utterly obsessed with makeup, and her brother Kengo, who insists he's a cat. Adding to the mix is the eccentric inventor Nanao, sporting a bucket on his head. And finally, their household's guardian dog, Goliath. So, there's this wild revelation one day. Mutsumi spills the beans that her whole family's in the spy game. Asano's jaw practically hits the floor. He never, not once, figured his childhood buddy Mutsumi for a spy. He's half expecting hidden cameras to pop up, thinking this has got to be some prank. But nope, nada, no cameras. She's dead serious. Then Kengo, another brother, steps in, trying to calm Asano down. He's like, "Chill, dude. We're not shady characters out there offing folks. We're legit government-approved spies, just doing our thing when the government needs us." Kengo spills the beans that they're not just any spies. They're like top dogs in the spy world. And it's all thanks to their big bro Hirukawa. Apparently, he's the top spy in the whole country. But wait, there's more. Dude's not just good at espionage, he's also a total heartthrob. Every lady spy out there's got a thing for him. They're quick to admit, though, Hirukawa's got some serious flaws, especially when it comes to anyone getting close to Mutsumi. But because he's so darn good at spy stuff, they let it slide. He's like the king of spies in their family, flaws and all. Asano couldn't wrap his head around why someone as important as Hirukawa would bother with him. He was just a regular guy, trying to deal with the pain of losing his family. But his sister Futaba shed some light on the situation. It wasn't some weird obsession with sisters that drove Hirukawa. It was the fear that someone was out to get Mutsumi, his sister. This fear had made Hirukawa suspicious of everyone, including Asano. It all started years ago when Mutsumi got hurt because of Hirukawa. The incident left her with a strand of white hair, a visible reminder of the trauma she endured. Hirukawa blamed himself for what happened and became fixated on protecting Mutsumi at all costs. So, even though Asano was Mutsumi's childhood friend, Hirukawa still saw him as a potential threat, unable to shake off his guilt and paranoia. To keep her safe from anything that might distract her, he became overly protective, cutting off all her ties except with Asano. Futaba also reveals that Hirukawa has disliked Asano for years, but let it slide because he was Mutsumi's childhood friend. Now, with a reason to act, he's finally targeted Asano too. Speaking of which, Hirukawa shows up at their house, setting off their alarm, signaling he's here to settle things. But Kengo reassures Asano, promising that as long as they're all alive, Hirukawa won't harm a hair on his head. Shinzo said all the doors were locked tight to keep someone out, and he'd set up traps too. But they weren't sure if it'd be enough to stop the top spy in their family. Futaba was ready to throw down with her brother if she had to, telling Asano they only had a 30% chance of winning against that beast, even though it was 5 against 1. She also warned they might end up in the hospital for months after the brawl. To stop Hirukawa from chasing Asano, Futaba had a solid plan. Asano and Mutsumi should tie the knot. In their family, there's a rule against hurting each other, so if Asano married Mutsumi, Hirukawa would have to lay off. Mutsumi understood Asano's pain all too well. After the recent terrible event, Asano had shut himself off from everyone. Mutsumi knew that he couldn't bear the thought of anyone getting close to him. So when the others suggested including him in their plans, Mutsumi refused. She explained to them that Asano was in a bad state, unable to talk to people, or even sleep properly. Futaba, finally grasping Asano's inner turmoil, felt remorse for her insensitivity. She approached him and apologized sincerely. Left with no choice but to confront their older brother, the 5 siblings prepared for the impending battle. Unbeknownst to them, Hirukawa had been eavesdropping on their conversation the whole time, silently observing their plans. Hirukawa casually mentioned that he had dismantled all the traps Shinzo had set up around the house, saying they were like child's games. Futaba, tired of her brother's nonchalant attitude, bluntly told him to stop trying to harm Asano. Hirukawa couldn't agree, explaining that since there was no guarantee Asano wouldn't harm Mutsumi, he felt compelled to take drastic measures to ensure his sister's safety. Unable to reach a compromise, Futaba grabbed Hirukawa's tie and brought him crashing to the ground, revealing her incredible strength. However, Hirukawa emerged from the fall unscathed, merely smiling at everyone. Nanao jumped into the fray, delivering a powerful punch to Hirukawa's head, while apologizing in advance. But like Futaba, he couldn't even scratch Hirukawa, getting sent flying instead. Hirukawa warned them all, stating that if they didn't hand over Asano, he'd tear the house apart. As Hirukawa gets ready to unleash his powerful move, Futaba, the steel spider, realizes how risky it is for Asano to stick around. So, she urges everyone to flee with Asano, while she stays behind to stall for time. She tries to close in on Hirukawa, but he swiftly immobilizes her by ensnaring her against a seal with strange strings from his hands. Little did they know, Bros is secretly Spider-Man. With Futaba out of commission, Shion steps up to confront Hirukawa. She uses her phone to launch a drone attack, but it barely phases him. Meanwhile, Asano dashes off with Mutsumi and Kengo, who guide him to a hidden spot, urging him to stay put until they're done dealing with Hirukawa. After dealing with Shinzo's drones, Hirukawa emerges unscathed and finds Mutsumi, Asano, and their loyal dog Goliath standing right by the painting. Hirukawa managed to stop both Mutsumi and her big dog, Goliath. But then, something surprising came to light. It wasn't Mutsumi causing all the trouble. It was Kengo. He had been pretending to be Mutsumi by wearing a mask. The real Mutsumi had disguised herself as Asano. Mutsumi revealed herself and tried to talk sense into her brother. She told him that Asano wasn't out to hurt her. Instead of understanding, her brother made a strange offer. Mutsumi could stay locked up in their house forever, and he'd leave Asano alone. It was a ridiculous idea, but Mutsumi agreed to it just to keep Asano safe. Asano overheard their conversation and didn't like the sound of it. He didn't want Mutsumi to be stuck inside forever, so he stepped up. He agreed to marry Mutsumi to protect them both from her crazy brother. And to seal the deal, he put on the family ring, becoming a real part of their family. And that's the end of this story. If you like our content, please do support us by like our video and subscribe to our channel, which will encourage us to create more new videos. Thanks for watching. We'll meet again in another spectacular video. Until then, peace.